Hi, this is Ingrid and welcome to my WinterBookLand. And today we were actually going to go through some of my annotating habits and, how I organize my annotating. But it's been so long since I've done book reviews, so I thought I would instead do a flash review now. And we can take the annotating another time. And one thing I've been meaning to mention for like 3 weeks now is that as Christmas is coming up, I may have to reorganize my schedule on uploading videos. I may not upload, a lot because we have our exams, and luckily, due to our Norwegian teacher, we only have 3 written exams. But still they're like 5-hour exams. And as always, I will put the timestamps up here so you now have time to skip to the time or book that you want to hear most about, and there we should be done. We have about 6 books to get through today, but some of the reviews won't be as deep as others, simply because I have different interests in different books, and some of them are also sequels, so like either I'll put up spoiler warnings or I try to keep myself away from spoilers for not talk about those books. But with that in mind, I think we're just going to get started. And the first book we're going to talk about is The Tyrants Tomb by Riordan. This book is the 4th book in the Trials of Apollo series, and if you do not know, the Trials of Apollo follows the Greek god Apollo as he's sent to Earth as a human by Zeus as punishment for something that happened in an earlier series, and he has to go through these trials and stop these like ancient Roman emperors from achieving their goals to become a god again. The thing is, you need a lot of context to begin this series. So I would recommend starting with Percy Jackson and then the Heroes of Olympus if you want to understand fully what is going on in the series. And of course this is a sequel, so like slight spoiler warnings. But I can say for the entire series, I think that Riordan manages to write like depression in a very good way. It is very clear in the 2 last books here, at least, there's like gonna be a final 5th book, but in book 3 and 4 it is very clear that Apollo is suffering from some kind of depression or some kind of like issue. I probably shouldn't have said issue, but it's just like you see he is struggling with something, and his self-esteem is practically at rock bottom. Like, I try to figure out how to say this in the best possible way because like this is a children's book, but still I feel like a lot of Apollo's thoughts are very suicidal sometimes. Kind of like, why should I bother? Why should I be alive? He has a lot of survivor's guilt from the last book, and I think that Riordan manages to describe this very wonderfully, and it is handled with so much care and respect. And in addition to this, kind of the Apollo's like sidekick, or he's her sidekick, is a girl named Meg, and she has been mentally abused by her stepdad, or adoptive father you could say. And the book takes a really great approach to this, or the entire series does, and it is really refreshing to see an author take such an approach to it and understand it in such a way that Riordan does. And also the plot here is pretty great. You feel like it's pretty cohesive. The characters are hilarious. They're funny and witty, and but they can also like have emotional speeches when they want, and just have such deep characterization. It's been a long time since I've read this, so I read this book in one day. So the language is also like very great and very easy. This book is just great, I feel like. It's Like, I feel like it's a great transitional kind of book. So when you start going out of like middle grade books and onto YA, I feel like these books are a great transition through that. So the next book we're going to talk about is, I'm sorry, I had my pile of books there, so I just looked down to get it. It is One Dark Throne by Kendra Blake. This is also a sequel. It's a second book in a series. The first book is Three Dark Crowns, and I've also reviewed this in my last flash review, I think, so I'll link that down below. I think I said in my review for Three Dark Crowns that it was very like plot driven, or was it character driven? I don't know. But this book at least is very character driven. It is very about like introspection and these girls learning about themselves. I should probably tell you what the book is about though. Okay, so the first book in the series centered around these three girls born on this magical island called Fanburn. And the thing about this island is that each generation of queens are triplets. When these triplets are born, the past queen who like gave birth to them has to leave the island, and the island is without a ruler until this kind of competition between the three queens starts. So one queen has to kill the other two to become queen. So each queen has kind of her own element. We have the queen Mirabella, who can control like water, fire, that kind of thing. And then you have Catherine, who is a poisoner. She can like poison stuff and is immune to poison. And you also have Arsinoe, who is a naturalist queen. She can connect animals and similar things. The first book I thought was actually pretty great. It set up a good story. This book kind of continued it. I think Catherine's development was definitely the strongest point. As I did in the previous book, I thought Arsinoe was a like pretty whiny character. Like Arsinoe's chapters were the most difficult to get through. Blake is very good at describing this feeling of these girls being like helpless in the situation because they don't have a choice in whether they have to kill their own sisters or not, and I thought that was really great. I'm trying to think of something more to say, but I can't. Like, it was pretty okay, you know, it wasn't, you know, groundbreaking, but it was okay. A good follow-up, and it set a good plot twist for the next book. The next book we're going to talk about oh my god, I can't talk today. The next book we're going to talk about is The Devouring Gray by Christine Lynn Herman. So this book takes place in this tiny like town called Four Paths, and in this town there are like these four founding families, and the founders of the town and like the generations of founding families after them have this kind of duty to protect the town from a beast called the Grey. And the Grey is kind of out in the woods and it kills people. We meet this girl Violet, who is moving back into town with her mother after her twin sister, I think it is a twin sister, dies in a car accident. And as Violet finds out, she is a descendant from one of these founders of the town. And something is happening with the Grey. The first thing I want to mention is that this book is kind of a metaphor, I think. The author of this book has said that this book is kind of to represent her depression, and I could see that in the storytelling, the writing, how this was a metaphor for depression, but it also works good as a standalone book. I thought some moments were a little bit slow. You had some character interactions that were a bit annoying, but all in all, this... Do you say all in English? So one thing that was done extremely well in this book was the discussion of trauma. All of these characters have some kind of trauma, and it was explored extremely well. This book also normalizes sexuality a lot. Like, you mentioned that people like come out and you mentioned their sexuality, but it's not a big deal. Like, it's not just as a bad plot wise, it just is there. So I think that is a really great thing. One thing though that was kind of like a little bit, you know, unnerving is that normally you would just find a way to describe the character one time. That one time you would describe them. And you would usually find some weird way to describe them, because just describing them straight up, it's not good, to say the least. But in this book, every time Violet gets introduced to a different person or different person sees her, it is always mentioned that she is white. So, you know, I think the character descriptions could have been done a bit more subtly and not like repetition so much. Also, the plot twist at the end was very good. I think it was very well handled. The ending I loved very much. It is a cliffhanger, but it also, like, it is a cliffhanger, but it is a good cliffhanger. It excites you for the next book, and the characters also had enough development and were interesting enough to want to make me read the next book, to see where they're going and explore the character more and see how they might develop. And then we have a book that I don't have here right now because I lent it to my mom, and that is Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. So if you haven't been living under a rock, you know what this book is about, because it recently got a TV show which was very popular. This book centers around the apocalypse. It's going to happen, and in preparation for it, the Antichrist has been born. And it is up to the angel Aziraphale and the demon Crowley to raise this Antichrist and make sure that he brings the end of the world and the final battle between heaven and hell. What happens, though, is that these satanic nuns manage to misplace the Antichrist, and 11 years later they realize that the child they thought was Antichrist wasn't the Antichrist, and they've lost him. This book is a very humor-filled book. It is extremely well written. It is extremely humorous. Pratchett and Gaiman's writing is just wonderful. The thing is, though, if you want like quick jokes, this book isn't for you, because some of the jokes here are very like drawn out and like are very context based and like can go on for a long time before they come to the punchline. But like the overall humor of the book is just wonderful. Like, this angel and this demon have just the most wonderful chemistry, and you also have just, you know, the Antichrist and his friends also have a wonderful dynamic. Like, I don't know what else to say, except like it's pretty absurd. Like, you're probably on YouTube right now, so you can just go and search up That Brand New Baby Smell. It is a song to the Netflix series, and from that I think you can gather how ridiculous this book is. The next book I'm going to talk about is CoFounder Hug by Maggie Stiefvater. This book is a kind of spin-off to the Raven Cycle, another series she has written. This book centers around a boy named Ronan Lynch who can pull things out of his dreams, and his kind of struggle with pulling things out of his dreams. You also focus on a girl named Hennessy, who is a dreamer like him, and her kind of struggle with her dreams as well. And then you have Carmen Farouk Lane, and she is one of the people that hunts these dreamers, because the organization she's part of has learned that a dreamer will bring forth the end of the world. I read this book straight after I'd read Good Omens, and the thing is that I missed Maggie Stiefvater's writing. If you do not know, Maggie Stiefvater has this very flowery language that is very unique to her, and it is she's amazing at storytelling, and this book is one of her greatest, I think, in terms of having beautiful language. The thing is that Ronan in this book is of course a character from the Raven Cycle. So the thing is that we instantly feel more connected to him than the other two characters that are the focal point here. And that I've seen a lot of other reviewers talk about that as well. Like, it was difficult to connect to the other characters. Story-wise, it is very well written. You know, as a character, Hennessy was very interesting to read about. I didn't quite like Carmen. She was a pretty stale character. I didn't like her from the first point because, like, she killed people for dreaming and stuff. But yeah, character development in Hennessy at least was done wonderfully. And, you know, Ronan's relationship with his brothers and, of course, his boyfriend was just wonderful. It made me emotional. And one, small part of this book is Ronan's big brother Declan. He also got a small part in this book in some development, and it was really interesting to see some deeper parts of Declan because you don't really see that in the Raven Cycle. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about this book, because it took me one day to read this as well, and I recommend reading this, although I personally think you have to read the Raven Cycle first to get the kind of emotional connection to Ronan that the rest of us have. But yeah, I definitely recommend it. It is a great book. And then we have come to the end. And I was discussing whether to have this book on the list or not. I was debating with myself whether I wanted to have this book in the video or not, because I started this yesterday, but I've kind of struggled with it, so I've decided now that I'm going to DNF this book. And normally I give myself a margin. I'm going to read at least 50 to 100 pages of the book to see if I may like it. The thing is that I only got to page 24. So the book I'm talking about is Wrecker by Noel O'Reilly. I bought this as an afterthought because at this big bookstore in Norway you can buy 3 English books for the price of 2. So I just kind of bought this to get an extra book. So the thing is, I haven't even gotten to the main plot line yet in this book, so I have to read off the back. It sets place in Porthmore Warren in Cornwall, and shipwrecks and similar things are very normal there, so people kind of go out to scavenge things that turn up from these wrecks. And the main character, Mary Blight, rescues a man from a wreck, and he is intent on, save the villagers from the superstitions and pagan beliefs they cling to, and not everyone wants to be saved. So my first point that I noticed about this book was that it is a massive disconnect between the dialogue that characters use and the storytelling language that sets the mood and the setting of the story. These characters talk in an overdramatic fashion. It is horrible to read. They are so overdramatic and so pretentious, and it's very annoying to read, but the language that the author uses is very simple. And you know, I complained about this to my friend who didn't really understand it, but there's this sentence in the book where the main characters get an evil smile from someone, and that was the point where I just gave up. I think that was around page 10. I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to hate this, but I'm going to try. Because to use the word evil smile, I feel like is the stupidest thing ever. Like, you can describe a smile in so many ways and not use the word evil, because I feel like evil is so simple. It's just, it's like, I couldn't really explain this to my friend, but to use the term evil smile. To me it doesn't feel like good writing. If you're wondering, this woman says that a man has to let go of her because she has to puke. Let go of me. I be about to puke. And the entire language of the book is like this. Every dialogue at least. Okay, so there was this one line that just stood out to me that made me think I don't want to read this anymore. This is the page that I stopped on because I realized that this is too much of a shit show to read further on. Afterwards he said, I have to make an honest woman of you now, I seem. As the cold breeze blew up my skirts and tickled my tender parts. Some people said like it's very clear that this book was written by a male author, and you know, I don't normally believe in like stuff like that like you shouldn't like say, oh, it's obviously written by a man, because I feel like that's kind of sexist. But in this case, you know, I feel like it's written by that kind of man. And you understand what I say when I say it's written by that kind of man. So it's a big no for me. So this is a DNF book on page like 25. And you know, I try to not DNF books, but when they insult me like this, I see no other choice. So that was my flash reviews of these books. If you have something you want to say about the books or discuss something with me, you can leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed what I had to say, you can maybe subscribe and leave a like on the video. And I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!